In modern war, there are moments that just don't seem to make sense. Imagine this. A country is under a relentless bombing campaign from the most powerful military on Earth. They get an offer, a ceasefire, a chance for it all to stop. The logical response, you'd think, would be yes. But in this case, the answer was a firm, immediate no.
So why? Why turn down a chance to stop the attacks? Well, this wasn't just some emotional outburst. This was a cold, calculated, strategic decision, and it's one that is deeply rooted in a very painful history. To really understand why they said no, we have to first understand the war itself.
And here's the first big piece of the puzzle. You see, that American offer for a ceasefire, it wasn't coming from a position of strength. It was actually an admission that their initial plan had completely and utterly failed. They expected a quick, decisive victory, but what happened was something else entirely. The plan was called Operation Epic Fury. And on paper, the promise was simple, a fast, overwhelming strike that would make the government collapse. But the reality? Well, just 10 days in, it was the exact opposite. The war was already a drawn-out stalemate, and instead of collapsing, the Iranian government was actually more unified than ever. The short war America had planned suddenly had no end in sight, and the reason it went so wrong boils down to the sheer scale of Iran's response. It all started with a shockwave. Out of nowhere, 500 ballistic missiles launched, striking targets across 6 different countries, all at the same time. The scale was just unimaginable. The air defenses were completely swamped. And that was just the opening act. After the missiles came a swarm, 2,000 exploding drones, a relentless wave of attacks designed to find any gap in the defenses. And it worked. They took out a billion-dollar radar installation in Qatar, just like that. Of course, the fallout wasn't just on the battlefield. It sent a shockwave through the global economy. Oil prices skyrocketed to $119 a barrel. To put that in perspective, that was the biggest one-week price jump since 1983. The economic pain was immediate, and it was global. But here's what's truly stunning about all of this. America's own intelligence agencies, they saw this coming. A formal report from the National Intelligence Council had stated very clearly that a large-scale attack was unlikely to work. So that ceasefire offer wasn't just a change of plans. It was a quiet admission that the spies were right and the generals had been wrong. So to really get to the bottom of Iran's no, you have to look back. You have to look at their history with these kinds of offers. Because for them, this wasn't the first time they've been approached about peace. And what happened in the past, well, that defines everything about their strategy today. You don't even have to guess at their reasoning. The Iranian foreign minister went on American television and laid it out for everyone. He pointed to what he called a clear and undeniable pattern. Every single time the U.S. came to the negotiating table, an attack followed soon after. And when you look at the recent record, you can see where they're coming from. In June of 2025, peace talks started, only for attacks to resume right after. Then, in February 2026, diplomats were saying a nuclear deal was incredibly close. Just 3 days later, bombs were falling on Tehran. This history has built a wall of deep, potent mistrust. So because of all that history, when Iran hears the word ceasefire, they don't hear an offer of peace. They hear a trap. They see it as a purely military tactic, a pause to give the U.S. military time to reload, reposition its forces, and then attack again, even harder than before. This deep-seated mistrust leads them to their one, single, absolute condition. They are not interested in a temporary pause. What they demand is a permanent, structural end to the conflict, a total guarantee that they will not be attacked again. For them, anything less isn't even worth discussing. So right there, you have this huge gap, a chasm that seems impossible to cross. But believe it or not, the situation gets even more complicated. When you start to look at what's happening inside Iran and how other global powers are playing this, it's like nobody's on the same page. And check this out. There seems to be a major disconnect inside Iran's own leadership. You have the president publicly offering peace to neighboring countries, and then just hours later, Iran's military launches a massive missile strike against those exact same countries. It suggests the diplomats talking peace and the commanders waging war are operating on 2 totally different tracks. And this really brings us back to the core of the problem. The 2 sides are basically living in different realities, using different dictionaries. To America, a ceasefire is a timeout. It's a chance to stop the economic bleeding, calm the oil markets, and figure out a new strategy. But to Iran, a ceasefire is a trap, unless it comes with that ironclad, permanent guarantee against any future attacks. And this isn't just a two-player game. You've got other major powers with their own interests. Russia is actively helping Iran, providing intelligence. China, well, they seem content to just sit back and watch America's military reputation take a serious hit. And Europe? They're facing a massive energy crisis, with 20% of the world's gas supply from Qatar now offline. Nobody has a strong incentive to make this stop. And this is where we hit the final, unbreakable wall. For Iran to get the permanent deal they want, they say the US has to fully withdraw its military from the entire region. But for the United States, that's an absolute red line. A full withdrawal would be a global humiliation on a scale not seen since Vietnam. It is politically impossible. And so you're left with the grim, simple logic of it all. America cannot give Iran what it wants, and Iran will not accept what America is offering. With no path forward, no room for compromise, the war just grinds on. There's a word for this kind of war. A conflict where both sides are completely unshakably convinced that if they just hold on a little longer, the other side will be the one to break. It's called a bloodbath. So we're left with this impossible stalemate, a high-stakes staring contest where retreat means humiliation and compromise is seen as a trap. And as the machinery of war continues to turn, you're left with one final, haunting question. In a contest where neither side is allowed to blink, who really pays the ultimate price?